Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. Thank you for bearing with me, everyone. I inadvertently scheduled this for 5 o'clock tonight. So I'm glad to see that you are all here. I had meant to actually do it at my normal time of 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, but I hope you all got word. I put an email out today that tried to explain that. Next Thursday and the Thursday after that, we'll be back to the usual time of 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I'm glad to see that people are here. I was concerned that maybe we wouldn't have anybody. So for those of you that are here again, I see some familiar names on my board, and I'm glad to have you back again. So good to see some familiar names here. For those of you that are new, the way these webinars work, you create them. Every week you create them with your questions. I try to get through as many as I can, but as you'll see, there's more than I can get through, but we'll work through it. I can tend to get a little long-winded at times, but I hope it's always for a good reason, that it gives you some more understanding of this thing called Lyme disease. I am creating a recording of the webinar tonight, and I should be able to get that out to you in an email or the link to it out to you in an email tomorrow morning. Early, as I'm actually traveling tomorrow. So my intention is to do that editing late tonight and get it out to you as soon as those edits are complete. If for some reason it doesn't go as planned, probably sometime early afternoon tomorrow, you'll get the email. Okay, so my goal is tomorrow morning, but otherwise it should come out tomorrow afternoon. Regarding the recording, if you happen to not get the email, you can actually find a copy of the recording on the homepage of my Lyme disease information site, which is Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. You scroll down towards the bottom over on the right-hand side, you'll see that recording. You can also find it on the webinars page there. Another place you can find it is if you go to my Marty Ross MD supplements, my medical supplements store on the homepage. Down towards the bottom, I also post the recording there as well, too. Okay, so there's multiple places to find it. And let's see here. One other thing. Well, I think that takes care of it. Let's go ahead and get started. So, I know it. So in terms of writing your questions to me, you write them over here on the bottom of the screen, on the right-hand side of the screen. There's a chat box there. Write your question in the chat box. The only thing I ask is that you do not click your enter key until the whole question is complete. The way the program works on my side is if you hit the enter key, it creates a separate question, and it gets very difficult to put those questions together. Also, one other piece of business, I will read the questions, but I'm also going to post them so that people that are participating in the live version of the webinar should be able to see the question on your screen. However, that doesn't show up in the recorded version, so that's why I read the questions then. Okay? All right. So let's go and get started here. All right, this is from Sherry. Hi, Sherry. Let's see. What are your thoughts about CBD oil and treating Lyme? Does it help pain, fatigue, any other benefits to using it? So, Sherry, there's actually, as many of you know, before moving here to Austin, Texas, I lived in Washington State, which is where I practiced until the end of 2018 treating Lyme disease. And Washington State is a state that allows marijuana for a number of reasons. First of all, there's a recreational marijuana law, and also there is a medical marijuana law. We've had one of the original medical marijuana laws in the country. So I'm pretty well, I have a lot of knowledge of working with marijuana and CBD. The thing I will tell you about medical marijuana and CBD is we really don't have a lot of research. And the reason for that is the federal government has blocked effective research. But based upon research that's been done in people with multiple sclerosis, for seizure disorders, people with HIV and AIDS, a number of other illnesses too, there's some things that we can kind of learn about medical marijuana and CBD. And I'll talk about those here in just a minute, okay? All right. So first of all, what is the difference between marijuana and CBD? Let's talk about that first, okay? So CBD is a chemical that is found in cannabis plants, and THC also is a chemical found in cannabis plants, okay? Now, something is technically called marijuana if it has more than 0.03% THC, the chemical called THC, okay? All right. Now, THC is what gives you that marijuana high. Okay. That's what people are doing when they're smoking marijuana. That's the chemical that gives you the high. CBD, on the other hand, does not give the high. Okay. Now, they both interact with something which is called the endocannabinoid system. That's a mouthful. So basically, we have our own marijuana chemical system in our body. Our bodies naturally make marijuana-like chemicals. And that's part of something called the endocannabinoid system. All right. And there's two major chemical receptors. One is called TH1, another one's called TH2 receptors, and then there's some minor receptors as well too. All right. THC that you get in marijuana binds to the CBD1 receptor, I believe. And then CBD actually doesn't bind to either one of those receptors. All right. So what it does, CBD helps to block reactions in the body that break down our own natural marijuana chemicals. Okay. One of those is something called anandamide, and there's another one called 2-AG. Those tend to be the two major chemicals that we make that regulate our endocannabinoid system. All right. So when we're talking about marijuana, we have to realize that CBD is not equivalent to THC, all right, because they act differently. THC binds to the CBD1 receptors, and the CBD itself doesn't bind to either one of those receptors, but rather it helps elevate the natural body's marijuana chemicals, if you will, that interact with those receptors, all right? All right, so that's one point, okay? Secondly, THC is what tends to give you the high, okay? It does the more mind altering than what CBD does, all right? It tends to be more sedating as well too, okay? So when we're talking about one of the things that you can use THC and CBD for is sleep, all right? But to be honest with you, what's going to work better for sleep is something that has higher amounts of THC relative to CBD, all right? Now, in Washington State, you could go into one of these medical dispensaries and tell them, I want a mix that has 70% THC and 30% CBD. All right. You can actually do it that way. I'm not sure if the dispensaries in Colorado work that way, but basically, if you're wanting something stronger, for sleep, err on the side of THC. Okay. All right. Now, one of the problems with THC that I have to warn you about is it can lead to depression in some people. And it can sometimes cause more psychiatric problems, all right? Now, I just want to let you know, there's a potential of that. On the other hand, both THC and CBD can help with depression and anxiety. They both can, all right? Both can help with pain. Both regulate pain in different ways, but both are quite effective against pain. Both can help limit seizures. Both can help make it so that if you have a lot of salivation problems or making too much spit, like people get with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, they both can limit that as well too. Okay, so and they can help you deal with nausea as well too. All right, so there's a variety of benefits of the two. One is that they might help manage anxiety and depression. The other is they both can help manage sleep to a degree, although THC is stronger. Both can help manage pain to various degrees, and both can help with seizure disorders, or may help with seizure disorders, I should say. Okay, and both can help with just general body pain. Those are the big reasons that I look at using either THC or CBD. All right, then the little nuanced differences. If you happen to be able to get CBD and it doesn't work for pain, sometimes THC works better. Something that's richer in THC may work better. Okay. CBD is more accessible these days, though, because it's legal. The federal government it appears to be legal at this point, although the Trump administration has been making some remarks about it. But at this point, CBD is technically legal to get, and therefore it is much more accessible. THC, medical marijuana that is rich in THC, is harder. You have to be in a state that allows you to have medical marijuana, basically. Fortunately, I think there's up around 23 or 24 states in the country now that allow that. Okay? All right? There's different ways you can take these chemicals too, all right? And how you take it affects how it's going to work in you, all right? So if you have an edible, if you are a person that likes to eat marijuana cookies, for instance, all right, or CBD oil mixed in food, that's going to slow down its absorption. And so the effect of taking it may hit about 2 hours later after you take it, but it will last longer. It can last, I think, up to 7 or 8 hours. Okay. All right. Another way, but then that makes it really hard to regulate what your dose is. All right. So another way to do it is to either smoke or to vaporize it. Those, because you're breathing the chemicals in, get absorbed quickly into the bloodstream. And if you take it that way, usually within 30 seconds to 2 minutes, you have a pretty good idea of what the level of that is going to be. Okay, so you can get vaporizer oils, you can take it in by vaporizer, you can smoke it. Okay, all right. So that's all complicated stuff, but I have a whole article about it. So I'm going to show you where that article is here. Oops, I forgot. Actually, I can't do that yet. I got to bear with me here a minute. I got started a little bit late here tonight because of the time problem I caused here. I have to get that pulled up here. Let's see. There we go. Back here again. All right. So sorry, I didn't have it set up to be able to show you that. So I just had to pull up those websites or that website. All right. Let me do a screen share here. Okay. So this is my Lyme disease information site. As you know, this is Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. For those of you that really haven't poked around here much, I urge you to do it. There's a lot of useful information here. And most of it is in this thing right here called the Online Lyme Guide. Okay. Pretty much most problems or most things you want to know something about, you are going to find in one of the sections of my Lyme Guide. Okay. All right. So for instance, this marijuana, if you were to look under pain, you'll see I have a whole, that's where it shows up. It shows up also in the neurologic section as well too. All right. Now, let's say you want to know how to treat Bartonella. You can click on infection treatment plans. All right, and here you're going to find my article about how do you treat Bartonella. Okay, all right. The other thing you could do, if you're just not sure, I don't know where Marty would have put that thing, you can write up here in this search box, marijuana. Just put it in and click on it that way. Okay, so I at times I wonder if everyone really realizes all of the stuff that is here. It's all here. So if you're wondering about what to do with a problem in between our webinars, if you're wondering how I might handle it, take a look at the guide, okay? All right, there you go. Good luck, everyone. So within that article, I have a chart that tells you how quickly things act depending on when you actually, how you take it, that whether you're smoking it, eating it, okay? And I go through the science a little bit more that we learned from researching other illnesses, not Lyme. As to what this may help. Okay. One last thing I'll tell you. There are some people that advocate using CBD and even marijuana to treat a Lyme. A lot of that, there's been some preliminary work looking at that by a physician up in Canada called Ernie Murakami. And Dr. Murakami helped spearhead some Petri dish experiments that tried to see could CBD be useful, basically. And those experiments did show some good killing effect of Lyme in the lab. However, what I will tell you is what goes on in a Petri dish does not always mean it's going to work that way in a living person. And in this situation, having worked with medical marijuana in Washington State, I don't think that I would call CBD and marijuana the best Lyme germ killer. I think it's more effective as something we use to treat various conditions that can occur in Lyme disease. Okay? All right. Thank you for the question. Hello, Brenda. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Ross. Are there any medications adults can take as suppositories for Lyme and Bartonella? I have a hard time taking oral antibiotics. Also, is it okay to take Hutania, Cryptolepis, and Otobabark at the same time? I have Lyme, Bart, Impassable, Babesia. Thank you. Brenda, unfortunately, I'm not aware of a way of using antibiotics, either herbal or prescription, as suppositories. Okay. I haven't seen that done. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just haven't seen it done that way. In my practice, if somebody's really having a hard time, sometimes we just go ahead and do IV antibiotics because that's your way around the problems. The other thing to think about if you're having a lot of time if the issue is nausea that you may be having, it's possible to use medical marijuana CBD to help manage that symptom. You could do herbal medicines that might help with nausea. A big one would be to take something called licorice, do somewhere around 150 to 300 milligrams of licorice tablets. You can even do that 2 or 3 times a day. It can help with nausea, for instance. Ginger tea is very useful to help with nausea. One way to make ginger tea is to get ginger root, and you don't have to skin it the way you would for cooking, or peel it the way you would for cooking. But what you can do is take it and slice it into like about 1/4 1/8 inch slices. Take a handful and put that into about a handful like this, not like that, but a handful like that, and put it into boiling water, maybe 2 cups, 3 cups of boiling water. Boil it for 15 to 20 minutes, and you've got a nice ginger extraction. And ginger is a very useful anti-nausea medication as well, that sometimes is a useful way of being able to calm your stomach down so you can take medicines. In fact, ginger, when I first became a doc, I was a family doctor. And I even used to deliver babies for a very limited period of time as part of that. And one of the things that I found helpful was to use ginger tea to control a nausea of pregnancy, basically. So it can be pretty effective as well, too. Okay. In terms of the other part of your question, the Hootenea, Cryptolepis, and Notovabark at the same time, yeah, in my practice, I would have patients take those together. There's no problem in taking them together. You could mix them in the same glass of water if you want to. You can just do the drops directly in your mouth if you want to. But yeah, they can all be taken together. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Brenda. Let's see here. Patrick, yes, it's working. Patrick wrote a question, is it working? I know I was running just a little bit late, but yeah. All right, let's see here. Lou, we need a better way to stop Herxheimer's for the day when there is really a cure. Some of us with heart and other issues cannot stand a Herx. So Lou, it's a very difficult question. So everyone, Herxheimer reaction, what that means is as we start killing germs, the immune system sees the dead bug parts, and the white blood cells react by making a bunch of chemicals, inflammatory chemicals called cytokines, okay? And also the immune system sees the toxins that get released from these germs in addition to the dead bug parts, and makes cytokines, all right? So cytokines are inflammatory chemicals that give you what we call Lyme symptoms, actually, all right? So they're good and bad. On the good side, when white blood cells see a germ, they make cytokines. And those cytokines are supposed to help create more white blood cells, draw those white blood cells to where the infection is, and help those white blood cells work better to fight the infection. All right. The difficulty is in certain conditions, the immune system doesn't do a good job, and it keeps trying harder and harder. And eventually it can make too many cytokines. And too many cytokines give you fatigue, make you hurt all over, make it so you can't think, interfere with how your hormonal systems work, give you confusion. I can go down the list of what we call Lyme disease symptoms. The majority of those are actually too many cytokine symptoms, okay? All right. Now, a couple other things that can trigger cytokines like that too are having too many mold toxins in you. They trigger the immune system to make too many cytokines. And so mold toxin illness can look like Lyme disease does, okay? Having too many yeast in your intestines also triggers too many cytokines to be made, so it can mimic what Lyme disease looks like as well too, all right? So what happens in a Herx is your immune system sees these dead bug parts and the toxins that get released from killing the germ and reacts by making more cytokines, which causes all your Lyme symptoms to get worse because those are also triggered by cytokines, okay? So the best we can do, and it's a terrible problem for some people. Not everyone has severe problems with Herxheimer, but some people do. The best that we can do is to try to decrease the production of cytokines. And I recommend usually doing that by, or what I found helpful in my practice was to have people use curcumin, which is a component of turmeric. It interferes with production of cytokines. And the other thing I would have people use is glutathione. Glutathione is a very potent antioxidant that is made in every one of the cells in our body. And it works in two ways. First of all, it helps the liver remove toxins that might be triggering those cytokines, okay? But it also decreases oxidizing agents that trigger the white blood cells to make cytokines. So curcumin kind of like interferes with the factory production line, and glutathione decreases the orders that go into the factory to make the cytokines, okay? So what I have found helpful for many people that are having Herxheimer is to do a liposomal curcumin. And the product I used to like to use was something made by Thorne called Bariva 500. And the liposomal curcumin, I'd have people dose it as a 500 milligram pill 3 times a day. And for a severe Herx, I'd have them even increase it to 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. Okay. The other thing I would do for severe Herxing is definitely get on some liposomal glutathione. And notice I used the word liposomal twice here for curcumin and for glutathione. What liposomal means is that it is the herb microscopically wrapped in fat to increase its absorption. All right. So both glutathione and curcumin just are not that well absorbed. So if you microscopically wrap them in fat, you increase the absorption of it. All right. And so the liposomal curcumin, it helps with that. There's good studies on liposomal glutathione that have been performed by a company called Research Nutritionals that shows dramatic increase and really good increases of glutathione in red blood cells by their liposomal delivery method. Okay. And so the Research Nutritionals product I'd like to use is something called Trifortify. And for that, I would have people take 5 milliliters once or twice a day for a bad Herx. And that 5 milliliters is a teaspoon. Okay. All right. So I hear your point, and I'm wondering if you have tried some of these things I've talked about here. But if not, you may want to do that too. And yes, Herxing can limit how quickly we can do a treatment sometimes. All right. All right. So I'm going to do a quick screen share here. All right. So this is back at Treat Lyme. If you're wondering what to do for a Herxheimer reaction, take a look at the Herxheimer and cytokines chapter. Okay. And there's 2 articles you can look at. They're kind of similar. One is a whole article I have just about cytokines. Okay. And there's another one that is about Herxheimer reactions, which builds on the cytokine one. But in here, I describe the steps you would definitely want to take to lower them as part of a Herxheimer reaction. Okay. All right. All right. Thanks for that point that you raised there, Lou. Good luck to you. Hello, Carolyn. Let's see. What does Dr. Ross recommend for pregnant patients with active untreated Lyme? So this is one where you need to be seeing a doctor that treats Lyme disease so that they can help lead you through what would be best in your specific situation. Okay. What we do know, based upon some pregnancy registries that were kept out on the East Coast in the late 80s, early 90s, is that when a woman had Lyme and she did not get antibiotics during treatment, there's a 50% chance that her baby might get the Lyme. Okay. That same registry, people that enrolled and let information be collected about them, in that registry, it was shown, though, that if a woman was on antibiotics during pregnancy, that the transmission to the baby actually decreased or went to zero. Actually, there was no transmission that occurred. Okay. So one reason to consider seeing a doctor that can treat Lyme disease to help you is that being on antibiotics may help prevent the spread of this, because it looks like it's maybe 50% of the time that it might be spread. Okay. The other thing is a couple other points that I did see in my practice when I was treating Lyme, is that often, not all the time, but often women that have Lyme disease before pregnancy, they would discover that during pregnancy, their symptoms got a lot better. All right. And in fact, I had a patient of mine that got pregnant a couple of times while we worked together. She actually said towards the end she preferred being pregnant with her Lyme disease, because those were times that she had some of her best time until she got further into her treatment. Okay. And probably the reason that women might feel better during pregnancy with Lyme is that the body is designed to prevent injury happening to that developing baby. And in fact, based on animal studies, there's good information that shows that inflammation is decreased in the body, probably as a result of the hormonal environment that gets created as part of being pregnant. Inflammation goes down during pregnancy, and that may be why somebody with Lyme and who is pregnant actually feels better. Now, after pregnancy, the problem can be that sometimes because of lack of sleep, and sometimes because of more physical demands on the body from breastfeeding and all of that sometimes women actually feel worse after pregnancy. Okay. More fatigue, maybe more body pains as well too. Okay. Now, in terms of treating the Lyme germ during pregnancy, there are some antibiotics that are safe to use. Those would be amoxicillin, cefuroxime, something called Zithromax. Okay. If you happen to have a co-infection, like a Bartonella or a Babesia, there are some practitioners that will use some of the Babesia treatments and some of the Bartonella treatments. I believe rifampin may even be safe to use during pregnancy. And I think atovaquone, which is Mepron, may be safe to use during pregnancy too. I never had the occasion of using those in my practice though. Okay. All right. So these are things that you would need to talk with a Lyme literate medical doctor who can help you with that. Okay. All right. So those are my thoughts. Those are the things that can be used during pregnancy. There is an article I have that I'll show you that gives you part of this information. And this may even be something you want to talk with your OBGYN, is just bring in my article and show it to them as well too. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so in the online guide, there is a chapter here on, or a section here on pregnancy. There it is. And you can take a look at this article called Lyme in Pregnancy, Will My Baby Get It? What About My Health? Okay, I address some of the things that we just talked about. All right. Good luck to you, Carolyn. Hello, Sharon. Let's see. I went to Lyme, Mexico in Puerto Vallarta in March. I spent 6 weeks there. The first 3 weeks, 6 days a week, 2 times per day, I got clarithromycin and Rocephin IV for Borrelia. While there, I tested positive for Bartonella, but did not get treated for that. Now I'm home and feel worse than ever. My theory is that Lyme was addressed, but now Bartonella and maybe Babesia have taken over. What do you think? Sharon, it would be hard to tell. I would need to ask you a lot of questions to kind of tease through why you might be feeling worse now than there. Okay. Maybe it is Bartonella, maybe it is Babesia, but I'd have to ask you a lot of questions to help figure that out. The other thing to consider that I'll just throw out too, sometimes when people have been on antibiotics and they feel worse afterwards, it can be because yeast got too active in the intestines. All right. So as you know, being on antibiotics, and even being on IV antibiotics, knocks down the good bacteria that live in our intestines, which allows yeast to grow too much. All right. Because our intestines have both bacteria and yeast that live there naturally. Now, what happens if yeast start growing too much is the immune system sees that they're growing too much and reacts by making more cytokines. And so the worst feeling you may have is if you've got too many yeast going on in your intestines and your immune system is making more cytokines, it can make it look like all of your Lyme and maybe even co-infections got worse, when in fact it may just be too many yeast, okay? Now, the difficulty with yeast is we don't have a really good stool test to say whether there's too many, because yeast live in our intestines, okay? So you have to kind of make a decision based on symptoms. And when I was in practice treating Lyme, what I found, I would ask a few things. Number one, to help me figure out if somebody might have too many yeast. Okay, one is, do you have increased sugar cravings? Are you eating things that are more carby, for instance? Okay. Number two, if you happen to have sugar, do you feel a lot worse afterwards? Often people that have too much yeast after they have sugar, they'll crash pretty bad. Okay. For some reason, when people have yeast, they also can tend to get acne on their skin or lesions that look like pimples. All right. And that has something to do, in some people, if they have a genetic predisposition for this, probably the toxins that get released by yeast that get in the bloodstream interact with the skin, and people that have a genetic predisposition for it and create acne. So the other thing that can happen is eczema and skin rashes tend to get worse when you have too many yeast in your intestines too. People that have too many yeast might be more gassy and bloated. Women might have vaginal itching, vaginal discharge, okay? So kind of look at all of those symptoms, and if you tend to have a lot of those going on and you've gotten worse, it could be that it's yeast, okay? So let me show you two resources you can look at, and these are things you can even maybe even discuss with your primary care doctor or whoever else is helping you at this point, okay? Let me do a screen share here. All right, so take a look at the yeast chapter. Okay, and I'm just going to show you, there's an article that I have called Steps to Fix a Lyme Treatment Crash. All right, so this is where I talk about it could be yeast, or it could be Bartonella, or it could be Babesia. So take a look at that. But the first thing I always would start looking at when somebody got worse when they were under my care is I would wonder about yeast moving in. All right. In terms of, I do have an article here called "A Silent Problem: Do You Have Yeast?" And this that goes through those questions again for you to help figure out if you might have too many yeast. And if you do, take a look at this article called "Kills Yeast: A Brief Guide." It gives you ideas that I found effective in my practice to treat yeast. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question, Sharon. Good luck to you. Hello, Rose. Let's see. Hi, I'm curious. Do you think these tick-borne illnesses can be passed by mites, such as bird or rat mites? It's a very interesting question. So the answer is possibly. And let me explain what I mean by that. So in the world of Lyme disease, when we look at people that actually remember a tick bite, only about 50% of the time that somebody has Lyme do they remember a tick bite. Okay, so that makes you wonder why. Part of the reason for that may be that when a tick bites somebody and gives them Lyme, the ticks that have the greatest chance of spreading Lyme are the nymphs. They're the baby ticks. They're the ones that are out in the spring and early summer, and they're so small, people may just not see them. Okay, so part of the reason we have 50% of people that don't remember a tick bite is they just didn't see it, even though it really was a tick that transmitted. Okay, but again, you still have to wonder what else could be transmitting this. All right, so then there's some European studies, and I believe these were out of Poland. The last time I looked at it, I think these were some research that was done out of Poland. And the Polish studies show that mosquitoes, mites, I believe there were mites in that list, flies, and fleas can carry Lyme. All right, carry Lyme. Now that doesn't prove they transmit it. So carrying it, living in one of these vectors, does not mean it necessarily when it bites you that they transmit it, but it does give us some question as wonder if some of those other vectors could be spreading it, because we know they can carry it. Okay, all right. All right. Then the third thing is I would just share with you is I did have a patient in my practice that had no evidence that we could determine of tick bites. And in fact, was in an area of low possibility of ticks. It doesn't mean they don't occur there, okay, but just low possibility. But got acutely ill with Lyme symptoms after mosquito bites and did not test positive for any of the mosquito type and virus infections that we might see, but did test positive for Lyme. And so that was the first time I've wondered that well, not wondered, but it was the first time I've seen some more direct evidence that said, yeah, I think these other vectors might be able to spread it. Okay. All right. So let me just show you an article, because I actually have some of the science that I just said cited in this article. So take a look at the chapter I have called Transmission. And in this article, it's called How Do People Get Lyme? It's More Than Ticks. Okay. And actually, I want to look at this. It's been a while since I wrote this. I just want to take a look back here. Yeah, the research, the POLA studies say that mosquitoes, fleas, mites, and flies carry Lyme. Okay. And I give you the citations on those. Yeah, so there's the citations on those two. So you can look into that a little bit more yourself if you want to. Okay. All right. All right. Thanks for that question, Rose. Good luck to you. Hello, Susan. Hi, Dr. Ross. I've been taking 10 drops of biocide twice a day and would like to switch to biocide and LSF. What is the best way to do this? Lyme, Bartonella babesia. Thank you for being here, Susan. You're welcome. The comparison dosing of biocide and LSF versus biocide and drops is the LSF, you would do 2 pumps 3 times a day to equal 10 drops 3 times a day of the drops. Okay, that's your equivalent dosing. Okay, now it is possible the biocide and LSF, well, biocide, everyone, I should tell you what that is. That's an herbal compound that has a variety of herbs in it that has been shown in laboratory experiments to do a number of things. One is remove biofilms. Another one is to treat Lyme, or kill Lyme. Another one is to decrease chances of antibiotic and drug resistance to the germ. There's a variety of things that it can do. Biocide also has got some science showing it can kill parasites and that it can kill yeast as well too. Okay, so I have an article about that. I'll show you the biocide article here in a minute. Now, the LSF form of biocide is a liposomal form. Okay. And liposomal, again, means it's microscopically wrapped in fat, which can increase the chances that it gets absorbed into the bloodstream. Therefore, in treating Lyme disease, it may be more potent than the biocide drops, okay? And so I found that in my practice. What you might want to do if you're going to make that change, or what I would have people do if they made that change, is I would have them for the first few days, take their biocide and LSF and cut the dose in half. Okay, so do 1 pump 3 times a day. And if after 2 or 3 days that did not seem to lead to a Herx, then you might want to increase it to 2 pumps in the morning, 2 pumps at night, and then 1 in the middle of the day. Wait 3 days or so. If there's not a major Herx, then I would have my patients increase it to 2 pumps 3 times a day. Okay, all right. So let me show everyone that article on biocide, and if you're wondering what it is. That more recently, I had an article or a piece that I showed everyone that brought them back to looking at biocide again. And that is that there is newer research now showing that essential oils might be effective, at least on a petri dish, they're effective at treating persister Lyme. Persister Lyme is Lyme that goes into hibernation after it's been exposed to antibiotics for a while and starts ignoring the antibiotics. And that there's a researcher called Ying Zhang that has done some research showing that essential oils can kill it. All right. And in my article on essential oils, actually, let let me change track here. I'll come back to that point here in a minute. So in terms of the biocide, take a look in this one called Anti-Germs. All right. This is the article I have on biocide. And here you can see how I dose it based on whether you're taking it as a pill, the liposomal variety, or drops. Okay. All right. Then in terms of this article that I've just been blabbering on about essential oils, this is the essential oil article for persister Lyme, and it may help, okay? Now, in this article, I go over the research of Ying Zhang. I talk about what persisters are, and I talk about my thoughts on what this all means. All right, so a number of years ago, we went through a craze where everyone was using something called doTERRA oil. Not everyone, but a lot of people are using doTERRA to treat their Lyme germs. And generally, it just didn't help most people, okay? And I postulate in this article that one of the reasons that the doTERRA didn't work is it just wasn't that well absorbed. But I state in this article, I wonder if one of the reasons that biocide works is it does have 4 of the oils that are shown to help persister Lyme in it, and they're put in a liposomal form, which makes it so they get absorbed. So it is possible. I just want to hear what I said. It's not backed by research that biocide does this, but it is possible that this biocide, the liposomal form of it, may work well at getting those essential oils into a person to treat persister Lyme. Okay, so if you're wondering about that and biocide for persister Lyme, look at the essential oils article to see exactly what I'm talking about. I know there's a number of people that decided to start trying it after that article, but take a look at that. Okay, all right. All right. Good luck to you, Susan. Hello, Virginia. Dear Dr. Ross, I have NeuroLyme Cunningham panel and have tried many treatments. How does IVIG help? I know it has many donors and lasts about 3 weeks. Thank you, Virginia. And I have tried many treatments. Okay, so IVIG, so IV as in intravenous, IG is immunoglobulins, or another word for immunoglobulins is antibodies. Okay, all right. So the way that it works is you're being given antibodies. And antibodies are one way that the immune system uses to help treat germs, all right? So it may be for somebody with, and where we have good evidence that IVIG work actually is in people that have peripheral neuropathy, nerve injury of the small nerves, small fiber nerves out in their arms and legs. But there is some evidence that people that have bad NeuroLyme may get benefit from IVIG as well too. Now the science is not as great for it. Okay, I just want to let you know. Now the problem, there is a risk when you do IVIG, and that is that where IVIG is gathered from, collected from, is donors, okay, blood donors, all right? And to come up with enough for the treatment, there has to, they pool together samples from multiple blood donors, which means multiple people possibly giving you germs that your body hasn't seen before, all right? So even though the IVIG is screened for the common infections like HIV and hepatitis C and hepatitis B and some of those, all right, it is possible that they don't screen them for all the infections that somebody has. So it's possible that when you take IVIG that you may be setting yourself up to pick up something else. Okay, I'll just throw that out. That's a concern, okay? The other thing about IVIG is that because you're taking a foreign substance into you of another person's blood products, it sometimes can trigger a bit of a blood allergic reaction too. And so be careful if this is being done by somebody that's not a Lyme literate doctor, be careful because they sometimes will pre-medicate you to help limit this allergic reaction by giving you steroids. All right. And many of you may know we tend not to want to use steroids in somebody with Lyme because what we see with steroids in Lyme is that it can suppress the immune system, making Lyme get more aggressive, okay? Now, I have done IVIG in my practice on people before, and I did not use the recommended steroid that was supposed to go with it. I just did a good job of using antihistamines to limit those allergic type reactions. But I just want to let you know that's something you might want to talk with your doctor about, especially if they're not a Lyme literate doctor, about what are their plans regarding steroids, because some of the protocols call for using steroids as part of it too. Okay. All right. So can it help? I think it can. It's one of those things that some people do get benefit out of. I don't think the majority of people do. However, it can be very expensive, but also just be aware though, that if you're going to have it done, there's risk of picking up infections, and you want to make sure you're working with somebody that's willing to not pre-medicate you with, steroids. At least in my opinion, that's not a good idea. Now, these are all things you should talk over with your doctor, of course, okay? Because I'm not your treating physician here, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Virginia. Thank you for that question. Hello, Cynthia. Let's see. Hi, Marty. What is your advice regarding the shingles vaccine? I normally do not get flu vaccines. Thanks for everything you do. You're welcome. Interesting question. So, the problem with, so when you're considering whether to get a vaccine, all right, not all vaccines, but the specific one, like a shingles vaccine or the flu vaccine, all right, what you're doing is you're weighing out risk versus benefit, potential risk versus potential benefits, okay? And these are things for you to consider, okay? So in the case of the flu vaccine, let's start there first. My general opinion, and in my practice, was to not suggest that people get the flu vaccine. And let me explain that thought process, okay? So what I have seen with the flu vaccine is that often people with Lyme get worse, all right? And then when we look at the success rate of the flu vaccine, if you look at studies, I think last year the studies showed that the vaccine only worked 30% of the time. They got it wrong. They estimated the wrong strains for the flu vaccine. The recent reports I saw, I think, is that it's only worked 30%. Okay, now in a good season, the flu vaccine may work only 40 to 50%. Okay, so the question is, why would you take a vaccine that doesn't work that well, that has a great risk of making your Lyme worse? Okay, that's the flu vaccine discussion, okay? Now, regarding the flu vaccine, maybe in a year where we have killer flu, the flu that really is killing everyone, maybe it makes sense in those seasons, okay? All right, that's something you have to decide during that season, okay? The other situation where flu vaccine may still be good even if you have Lyme is if you happen to have somebody that has lung disease of COPD, because if you get flu, you're going to have a really hard time with COPD. Diabetes, asthma, those are kind of situations that it might be reasonable to think about getting the flu vaccine, that is. Okay? All right. Okay. Now, shingles vaccine. Shingles is a different thing. I haven't looked at the direct science about shingles vaccine, the success rate, okay, but I think it is very high. I classify that in my mind as an 80% or 90% effective vaccine. Okay, it's hard to keep everything, all of this medicine knowledge in our brain, but I put things in categories. And in my mind, the shingles vaccine is a high effectiveness vaccine. Okay. In my practice, I did not see many people get marked declines from getting the shingles vaccine. That's not to say they didn't. I'm just saying that I didn't see many people get marked declines, all right? And the risk of getting shingles, which is reactivated chickenpox, everyone, goes up dramatically after age 65. And you get into risk after age 65 then of getting permanent injury, like permanent nerve pain, a nerve injury from getting shingles. So the shingles, when I would talk with my patients, I would say, yes, there's a chance your Lyme might get worse, but at age 65 or older, you have probably greater risk of harm from getting reactivated shingles if you don't get the vaccine, okay? So you have to kind of have those discussions with each vaccine, the specific kind of vaccine, to determine, does it make sense in your situation? Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Cynthia. Thank you for that question. Hello, Rose. Let's see. I'm taking antibiotics and digestive enzymes. Can I take them at the same time? If not, how far apart? Thanks. Hold on here just a minute. So, Rose, I have not seen studies that give me enough information to say, do digestive enzymes interfere with the antibiotics? I haven't seen those studies. I don't know if that research has been done. Okay. All right. That doesn't mean it hasn't been done. I haven't seen it. Okay. All right. But just a comment. If you're using your digestive enzymes to help with digestion, it probably would be a better idea to not take the antibiotics at the same time. On the chance that they are actually turn on the antibiotics and not necessarily with your food. Okay. So a reasonable thing to do would be to probably take your antibiotics, stop taking them at least 30 minutes before you take the digestive enzymes, and wait for about 2 hours after. That would be what I would recommend to somebody in my practice. Okay. All right. All right. But again, I will tell you, I haven't seen any science to say yes or no on that. And I don't think that it's been done, to be honest with you. Okay. All right. Thank you for that question, Rose. Hello, Jennifer. Let's see. What are your thoughts on intravenous artesunate for Babesia? So the artesunate, I don't have experience with it. Okay, let me just start by saying that. My understanding, so artesunate, everyone, is a derivative of something called Chinese wormwood. And there's a variety of a derivative I have recommended in my practice and have used in my practice, which is called artemisinin. That comes in a pill form. There's also something called Artemisia, which comes in a pill form. All right, so artemisinin and Artemisia are pill form varieties of this derivative from Chinese wormwood. And just keep in mind, Chinese wormwood, the World Health Organization, in its recommendations for things to treat malaria, not Babesia, but malaria, one of its number one recommended things to use is actually Chinese wormwood or artemisinin. Okay, so they recognize how beneficial it is at treating blood parasites, in that case being malaria. And as many of you know, we will use anti-malarial agents to treat Babesia. Babesia is a blood parasite. It's a parasite that lives in red blood cells like malaria does. And most of us that treat Lyme have found benefit in using things that treat malaria. We also have seen those to be effective in treating Babesia. Now, having said that, what I will tell you about research about Babesia treatments is pretty limited. There's only been one study done that has looked at, one more recent study, I should say, that has been done looking at some of the newer malaria medicines. And that looked at using a combination of Zithromax with atovaquone, which is Mepron. And that study showed benefit in using those two together. Other studies, older studies, show quinine mixed with clindamycin can be effective too. A lot of these other ways that I have treated Babesia and my colleagues treat Babesia, there is not a research base that shows that they work, but most of us, based on clinical experience, see that they work. And the artesunate and artemisinin and Artemisia would all fall in that category. Okay, now artesunate, in helping people from across the world, where I tended to see a lot of people being offered that was in Australia. It seems to be a way that's available in Australia to treat. Did it work? My sense from talking with some people is yes. Is it any more effective than artemisinin, artemisia, or any of the other things we use? I don't know. So those are just my comments. Okay, I don't have enough experience using it to be able to give you a direct comment, and I'll tell you there's no research about it. So just to clarify that. Okay. All right. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm going to do a quick screen share here, just a minute. Okay. So if you're wondering ways that I found effective to treat Babesia, you'd want to take a look in the infection treatment plans tab here and take a look at my article called Kills Babesia, a Brief Guide. Okay. And I walk through here. Now, in terms of the artemisinin, I put that in a tier 2, and I probably, just knowing that it's the same derivative, I would put that in my tier 2 treatments as well too. Okay. All right. And then let me just see here. Yeah, this article right here, the second one, I believe, the second citation is the only one that's been done looking at. This is the one where we looked at Zithromex and atopiquone. Okay, there's just not a lot of great research out there for Babesia treatments, that is. Hello, Sue. Let's see. What is your opinion of LDN? I have had some relief with neurosymptoms. So LDN, so I have an article about it too. So if you want to look at that article later to get more into the actual scientific side and some of the science behind LDN, you can find it there. I'll show you the article at the end here too. So LDN, everyone, stands for low dose naltrexone. All right. And the reason we call it low dose is it's actually manufactured by the pharmaceutical companies as a 50 milligram pill. But when we're using it as part of a Lyme disease treatment, I'll tell you why we use it in a minute, but when we use it as part of a Lyme disease treatment, we're using it in a range often of about 1.5 to 4.5 milligrams. Okay, so not 50 milligrams, but up to 4.5 milligrams, and that's what makes it low dose naltrexone. Okay. And because it is low dose, it usually is something that has to, or not usually, it has to be mixed up by what is known as a compounding pharmacist, and that would be a pharmacist that actually has the ability to make up pharmaceutical compounds in their own office. Okay, all right. So what does it do? So naltrexone is a narcotic blocker. All right, and so what it was originally developed for was to help people that have narcotic overdoses and cocaine overdoses. And what it does is it binds to narcotic receptors, kicking off the narcotics that they might have had on those sites to get them to stop having the overdose reaction. Okay, all right. Now, our body makes a natural set of narcotics, and those are called endorphins. These are chemicals that we produce. And those endorphins have a number of effects. One is they help regulate pain. The other thing that those endorphins do is they regulate the immune system too. Okay, all right. All right, so our body has endorphin receptors, and the naltrexone binds to those endorphin receptors. Now, those endorphin receptors, when they get blocked by naltrexone, they actually react by becoming more sensitive to the existing endorphins that are around. In addition, the brain doesn't like this blockade, and it sends out a bunch of signals to the endorphin producing cells in the body to make more endorphins. Okay, so guess what happens is when the blockade wears off, and in low dose naltrexone, it wears off at about 4 to 6 hours. When that blockade wears off, then these receptors that are much more sensitive to endorphins get flooded with extra endorphins. And that has the ability to regulate an immune system to be less attacking. It tends to attack you less, okay? So one thing that it does is regulate the immune system, all right? The other thing newer science is telling us that naltrexone, low-dose naltrexone does, is it binds to some receptors in immune cells in the brain called microglia cells, and they're what are called toll receptors. And when it binds to those toll receptors, it changes the brain's transmission of pain. And so there's good benefit in blocking those receptors and controlling nerve and fibromyalgia pain. So one of where science is starting to show that low-dose naltrexone might help too is in fibromyalgia and in regulating pain. But it's doing so up at the brain level by blocking these toll receptors, or toll-like receptors in the microglia cells of the brain too. Okay, all right. So if your neurosymptoms are pain neurosymptoms, I think you might get some relief. If your neurosymptoms are caused by the immune system attacking the brain, it is possible that naltrexone could give you some relief there too. Okay, all right. So let me show you the whole article that I have on this, and even has citations that you can look at if you want to read more on this too. Okay, so this is an article about low-dose naltrexone for Lyme. Okay, even in the article, I talk about how you would go about dosing. This is the information about the toll-like receptors that I was just telling you about. Okay, all right. All right. Thanks for the question, Sue. Good luck. Hello, Rose. Let's see. Have you seen cefuroxime acetyl paired with oral metronidazole as a treatment? I was having good luck with metronidazole and doxy, but ran out of the doxy and had some of the cefuroxime and thought I would try to pair them up. Thoughts? All right. So, Rose, I'll show you an article that I have. It's an article about how do you pair antibiotics together to treat Lyme. All right. And I do believe actually I have as an example using the cefuroxime and the metronidazole. All right. So basically, when you treat Lyme, what many of us have found to be effective is to use a combination of antibiotics that treat Lyme that lives inside of cells and outside of cells, and also Lyme in its two major forms, which are called spirochete, that's a spiral thing, and also another form that's a microscopic cyst form. Okay. Metronidazole has the ability to get inside of cells and treat intracellular Lyme, and it can treat the cyst form of Lyme. Okay. The cefuroxime treats the spirochete form of Lyme by limiting its ability to repair its covering. So it's a cell wall repair blocker, if you will, that treats the cell wall of the spirochete. And so that combination I found could be an effective combination. Okay. In some people, it might work better than a doxy metronidazole, and other people it might not, but it is something that has good potential to help. Okay. All right. Doxycycline, the way that it works is it can work intracellularly, treating intracellular Lyme. And it also helps limit the growth by preventing protein production inside of spirochetes. Okay, so it helps treat the spirochete as well too. All right. So let me show you an article where you can look at more of this later if you're looking for other combinations or ever have questions about combinations. All right. So again, if you're ever wondering, what should I pair with what drug works best for this or that in terms of killing the germs, take a look at my section called Infection Treatment Plans here. Okay. And you'll see I've got an article on Bartonella. How do you work with herbs or prescription antibiotics to kill Babesia? But here's the one on Lyme. It's called a Lyme Disease Antibiotic Guide. Okay. And in this article, I describe, I lay out the different families of antibiotics and what they might do to treat Lyme. And so cephalosporins includes the cefuroxime, okay? And so I talk about that here. Tetracyclines includes the doxycycline, and azoles include the metronidazole, okay? And then down here, I give you examples of things you could pair together. I'm just trying to see if I have... I don't have that one directly, but I do have an IV regimen where you can do a cephalosporin with an azole. But anyhow, it is possible to put a cephalosporin like a cefuroxime together with the azole, the metronidazole you're talking about, in an oral combination and have it work well. Okay? All right. Thanks for the question, Rose. Hello, Gail. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I had an elevated ALT by 1 point above normal lab core. Then it was redone at Sutter Labs. My ALT was okay, but my total iron is high, and my ferritin is low, and my bilirubin was 1.6. My PCP is sending me to a hematologist. Could this be hemolytic anemia? Can Bartonella cause this? Could such anemia be causing the red, raw, burning toes, skin with sores? So to answer your last question, I haven't seen anemia lead to the medical problem that you described there. Okay, all right. In terms of the ALT, ALT and AST are two enzymes that are manufactured by the liver. And if they become elevated, they can be a sign of liver inflammation. All right. Now, in the world of Lyme disease, when you're using herbal or prescription antibiotics, sometimes they will inflame the liver to a degree. And in my practice, what I used to do is I was okay with an ALT and an AST going up to 2 times the upper end of normal. So for instance, if an ALT for the lab, the upper end of normal is 44, I would be okay if somebody was on antibiotics letting it go up to 88. Okay, all right. So, and that's just because you're going to get a small degree of inflammation from being on the herbal or prescription antibiotics, okay? Now, ferritin is the storage form of iron. It's how iron is stored in the body. And it's stored bound to a bunch of proteins, basically, okay? Total iron is a measurement of iron that is free in the blood and also iron that is bound to other kinds of proteins besides the kind that are in ferritin. And sometimes it can be elevated if you happen to have a lot of extra proteins in the body that are holding on to more iron, okay? So it's hard for me to say what the meaning of this is. I would need to see, if you were my patient, what I would have wanted to get would be free iron or iron in the blood. I would have wanted to have the total iron. I would want to have something called total iron binding capacity. I would have looked at a variety of different things. I would want to know more what your total proteins are, et cetera. But I suppose that is what the hematologist is going to be looking at as well, too. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Gail. Hello, Jerry. Let's see. My son's LMD here in Washington passed away 3 years ago. Since then, my son's lymph nodes have been swollen in throat, and he is really struggling. What is the best advice at this point? So I think I know who your son's physician was. I suspect it was Dr. Newman, actually. I knew Dr. Newman from my years of practicing in Washington State as well, too. So I'm sorry to hear that. I can't say specifically what to do because that would be called giving you direct medical advice. Okay, which I'm in Austin, Texas right now, where I don't have a medical license. In Washington State, I still have a medical license, and I'm keeping that medical license there actually. But in terms of lymph nodes, just one thing to consider. So infections can trigger increased lymph nodes, okay? And the infection that seems to have the greatest chance of triggering lymph nodes is something called Bartonella. And now I suspect, knowing Dr. Newman and how he used to work at that, was who your son's doctor was, that Dr. Newman did a good job of looking to see if Bartonella was there. But your son might be aware as to whether Bartonella was being treated or not. And you guys should look at that. Sometimes if the lymph nodes are back, sometimes it can indicate that Bartonella has gotten active again. The other thing, though, is if your son, it is possible your son has other problems that cause swollen lymph nodes. So before jumping back into a Bartonella treatment or thinking that this is due to Lyme, if they have gotten particularly worse, he should get a basic evaluation with a primary care doctor to try to figure out causes of those swollen lymph nodes too. Okay, there would be some blood testing should be done. All right? Okay. Good luck to you, Jerry. Hello, Kelly. Hold on here just a minute. Hi, Dr. Ross. Let's see. I've been off antibiotic and supplement treatment for 10 months now due to damaged GI tract. Right now, my main goal is to strengthen my immune system and then begin your herbal protocol treatment. My question is, once I begin the herbal treatment, considering the sensitivity of my stomach, in what order should I try the following? Cytoquel, biocide, atobarbart, cat's claw, and glutathione. I'm thinking. I'm thinking about what the best thing to do here. In terms of things that if your gut, by your gut being destroyed, you mean gassiness and bloating, diarrhea, and possibly nausea. One of the things I strongly suggest, and you probably have been doing this, or that one thing I found effective in my practice was, after being on antibiotics, do a good job of rebuilding the healthy bacteria. Okay. And so in people that have this problem, a good foundation of before you start any kind of a treatment would be to make sure that you've done a good job of rebuilding the healthy bacteria. And there's articles I have about how to do that. I'll show that to you here in a minute. Okay. All right. But in terms of looking at these herbal medicines and things that might cause more GI sensitivity than others, generally, I found that patients did not have trouble tolerating the glutathione in terms of how it affected the GI system. Okay. Generally, I have not found people having difficulty with the Cytoquel in terms of its impact on the GI system. Okay. All right. The Otoba, cat's claw, and biocidin in some people can give nausea, and in some people can give abdominal cramping or even loose stools. And what you might want to do is pick one to start with first and start it, work up to the full dose, maybe over what I would do is I'd have somebody like work up to a full dose, maybe over a 2-week period of time. If they tolerate one, then I'd have them add another one and work slowly up to a full dose over a 2-week period of time. And finally, eventually add in the third one. Okay. That's kind of the approach I might do with somebody in my practice. All right. Okay. Good luck to you, Kelly. Oh, let me show you the probiotic article that I've written. All right. So take a look at, there should be stomach and intestines. There it is. This is my probiotic article right here, where I talk about a couple different kinds of probiotics you might want to look at. Okay. The other thing you might even want to take a look at is this article called Stomach and Intestinal Problems, Natural Medicine. So in other words, things you can do for some of the stomach and intestine problems that you might develop during treatment. Okay. All right. Thanks, Kelly. Good luck to you. Hello, Galaxy. Positive Bart on Galaxy. I read Bartonella bacilliformis can cause this anemia. I was not tested for Bartonella Galaxy. Please let me know your thoughts. Okay, so first of all, Gail, in the information you provided me, I did not see anemia. Low iron or iron stores does not mean you have anemia, all right? Because iron is one of the things that can lead to low blood, but there's other things that can lead to low blood too. And just having low iron does not mean you have low blood. Anemia technically means you have a low number of red blood cells, okay? And the two ways that we measure that is to measure something called hematocrit and hemoglobin. And I didn't see you share that with me in the last question. So I don't know that you have anemia. You do appear to have low iron stores, but I can't say for sure whether you have low iron in the body, okay? So I just want to point that out, okay? All right. In terms of Bartonella, as I understand the Galaxy lab, Galaxy is doing something called an enhanced PCR method. And so if that's what you had done, that enhanced PCR method, PCR means is a technique we use to look to see if there's DNA of the germ in you, okay? Their enhanced method is to draw blood, whole blood from you, and then try to see if there's Bartonella that can grow first on a special growth medium, then do the PCR test. So they're trying to amplify the amount of germs you have to see if they can measure it, all right? And their technique has the ability to detect 15 different strains of Bartonella. So if on the initial test it shows that you, or if their test shows that you have some form of Bartonella, then they go further and they actually type it out to see which of 15 strains that we think infect humans you might have. Okay? All right. So I just want to point that out. Okay? So if you all are wondering about this Bartonella test I was just telling you about, and Bartonella testing in general, you all may know, but you may not. I just published a new article today where I review again how to diagnose Bartonella. And in that article, I went through testing options, including this test from Galaxy Labs. Okay? All right. All right. Hello, Robert C. Do you know of any merit for the use of levocarnitine in small fiber neuropathy? So I know of the merit of L-carnitine and various forms of that called acetyl L-carnitine. Now, I'm not sure, and that's L-carnitine. I'm not sure if that's what you mean by levocarnitine, okay? But carnitine is a protein that is found in red meat that is used by the energy factories in every one of our cells called mitochondria. It's used by mitochondria to carry fat to the inside of the mitochondria, where that fat can be used to create cell fuel, okay? Sometimes when people get into nerve injury, including small fiber nerve injury, what also occurs is that the mitochondria are injured as well, and they can't generate enough energy for the small fiber to repair, okay? And so in terms of doing repair of any kind of nerve injury, it's useful to also do repair that supports the mitochondria. And for some people, especially if they're not eating red meat, taking carnitine, and I prefer to use something called acetyl L-carnitine because of absorption issues, but to take carnitine to help increase the number of transport vehicles, if you will, that can be used to carry fat and sugar into the mitochondria. Okay, all right. Now, there's other things you can do to repair the mitochondria and repair the nerves too. And I'm just going to show you an article on that so you can take a look at it later. Okay. All right. So take a look at my chapter called Brain and Nerves. And take a look at this article called Neuropathy Repair, Heal That Tingling, Numbness, and Pain. All right. And in here, let's see, I talk about repairing mitochondria, the covering of the mitochondria, which also happens, repairing the covering of the mitochondria repairs the outer cell covering of nerves as well too, okay? And in here, one of the things I talk about is carnitine, okay? All right, I give you a variety of things to think about in terms of how do you repair them. All right, thanks for that question, Robert. Good luck to you. Hello, Karen. Let's see. My husband had a tick embedded in him. We went to the ER to have the head removed. The doctor put him on 100 milligram 2 times per day for 2 weeks. We sent the tick in for analysis. On week 3, it came back positive for Lyme. Went to regular doctor who put him on another 2 weeks of doxy, 100 milligrams 2 times per day. Found a Lyme literate doctor who put him on 400 milligrams per day for 4 weeks. Is that long enough on 400 milligrams, or should he be on 8 weeks? Also is taking tinidazole 500 milligrams 2 times per day, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off for rotations. Okay. So what studies tell us, and that's the best I can rely on here, and then I'll just give you my clinical opinion as well too. So if using doxycycline for 1 to 2 months, and no one's done studies to say the ideal dose. Okay, I just want to say that. But if you use doxycycline for a month, 80 and it's acute Lyme, right after the tick got a tick bite, within at least 3 to 4 weeks, you start doxycycline in some way. Okay, in some variety, you start doxycycline and you use it for up to a month. The chances of getting rid of Lyme and not having it come back, based on studies, ranges from about 80 to 90%. In other words, an 80 to 90% cure rate. Okay, all right. There are no studies that say treating an additional month actually improves the outcome, but most of us that treat Lyme think for acute bites that there is a better chance, especially if treatment is started like 3 or 4 weeks after the bite, people have a better chance of not turning into ongoing chronic Lyme if we treat for up to 2 months, okay? But in a situation such as you just described here, where your husband got on antibiotics almost right away, generally, a month is enough. And in this kind of a situation, I probably would have treated for a month. Okay, now we get into the dosing issues. There are some doctors that do recommend taking up to 400 milligrams a day of doxycycline for an acute tick bite. And that would be to take it as either 400 milligrams at once or 200 milligrams twice a day. I can tell you, in looking at the science, I don't see that there's necessarily any science that says that the higher dose is better than the lower dose, and therefore it is very possible the lower dose might have worked. Putting this all together, though, if I were to see a patient like this, and somebody were to come in, they have done up to 8 weeks of doxy in the fashion that your husband did. And if they were not having any ongoing Lyme symptoms suggestive of Lyme, I would probably suggest that's long enough. In acute Lyme, there is no literature that says you have to be on a tinidazole or a metronidazole to treat the cyst form of Lyme. It is very possible in an acute setting that the doxy, by going after the spirochete, is enough, and that the immune system can step in and actually take care of the cyst form, okay? So for acute Lyme, my standard of practice was always to use just doxy and not to use the azoles. Okay, my own opinion is it may be overkill, but I can't say they're wrong either because we don't have science looking at the truth about this. Okay, but in any event, I think by the time you have now treated for 8 weeks, even on these various antibiotic doses, if I were seeing a person like this and they did not have any ongoing symptoms to suggest Lyme was still present, I would stop the antibiotics. That would have been what I would have done in my practice. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Karen. Hello, Anne. Newbie here. Welcome. you're going to be probably the last question of the night, so not bad for a newbie. As I said at the beginning, it gets to be hard to get to all the questions, but I'm glad we're able to get to yours. Thank you so much for your great work and giving freely of your time here. You're welcome. Concerning Bartonella, have you seen patients get better on lower doses of 300 milligrams rifampin and Biaxin in a 6 to 8 month time range? And are there other options for long-term Bartonella? Zhang says daptomycin is better, but at 4,000 to 12,000, completely out of financial range for many. After 6 to 8 months of strictly pharmaceuticals, should one look at naturals? Thank you. All right. So turn to daptomycin. Oh, I see, daptomycin. I was thinking dapsone when you said daptomycin, but daptomycin. I'll come to daptomycin in a minute. Let's talk about Bartonella here first. So my standard in practice was to use Bartonella, to treat Bartonella would be to use 600 milligrams of rifampin a day, coupled with 500 milligrams twice a day of regular strength of Biaxin. Okay, that was my standard. The problem you run into with Biaxin is there may be some rifampin. I have to look at this again. One of them, the rifampin or the Biaxin, decreases the dose of the other, and I'm blanking on which one does what here. Okay, but even that being said, I liked using the higher doses. Now, to know if it worked, what really matters is, did it work? Okay. So if you had symptoms that you looked at that looked like Bartonella symptoms, and you did this treatment of Biaxin or rifampin, and those Bartonella symptoms went away, then it worked. Okay. So the question, which I can't do here in this forum, is to go back and relook at what I call Bartonella symptoms. I'll show you an article where you can look at those in a minute and see, did they pretty much go away? If they did, well, guess what? It worked. And that's probably all you need to do. And yeah, 6 to 8 months probably would be enough. Okay. All right. All right. Now, in terms of daptomycin, so Dr. Zhang, everyone, is a medical doctor that has taken his tuberculosis lab at Johns Hopkins and turned it into a Lyme disease research lab. Okay. And the relationship is that tuberculosis has what are called persister cells, and Lyme, there's starting to be some interest in the body of research that's showing that one of the reasons we may have a hard time getting over Lyme is Lyme also can develop persister cells. All right. Now, keep in mind, just because the research is starting to say Lyme causes persisters, it doesn't mean that this is the reason people don't recover, but it is a possibility. Okay. All right. And not all Lyme turns into persisters. If we look at Petri dish experiments out of Northeastern University about 4 years ago, their studies on Petri dishes said that when germs are exposed to antibiotics on an ongoing basis, that about 20% of the spirochetes and 20% of the cysts turn into persisters. Okay. All right. But I will, all right. So Zhang has been doing experiments, coming up with initially Petri dish experiments, and then more recently a mouse study looking at what combinations of antibiotics might be useful to treat persister Lyme. Okay. And he's also been he's the same thing I talked about earlier tonight about essential oils. He's also done Petri dish experiments looking at essential oils too. Okay. One of the combinations that he found on his Petri dish experiments that can be useful for treating persistent Lyme is a combination of ceftriaxone, daptomycin, and doxycycline, I believe, was in that combination. The problem is daptomycin is horribly expensive, and at this point is pretty much reserved by the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry for people that have skin infections for which nothing else is working. And because it is not approved to treat Lyme, I'm very doubtful that insurance companies will even pay for it. Okay. All right. Now, Zhang's Petri dish experiments look good. So he wound up taking this combination of daptomycin, ceftriaxone, and I believe doxycycline was part of that combination. And he did a mouse experiment. And in the mice, it eradicated, from what he could tell, it got rid of persistent Lyme. I will tell you, I still think it's too soon to know if this is what's going to work for people. And it's horribly expensive. It is just horribly expensive. So it is out of financial range. And I think it's a bit early for everyone to be rushing and doing it too, because we really don't know if it's going to work. I'll be honest with you, we just don't know. In terms of the other part of your question, I will tell you, there are some naturals that might work. What I would suggest is take a look. I have an article on persistent Lyme that I would take a look at in terms of those questions to see ways that I found helpful to treat persistent Lyme. Okay. And you can take a look at it. We're out of time to go much longer anyhow, but I'll at least point you in the direction of that article. All right, so take a look at this, my infection treatment plans chapter. And take a look at this article called How to Treat Persistent Lyme, What Works. And in here, I mentioned those Northeastern studies, the Zhang studies. I didn't talk about it. Yeah, okay, here it is. The daptomycin, it was cefoperazone he used, not ceftriaxone. And the cefoperazone is also an IV antibiotic too. So anyhow, it gets to be a very expensive regimen. Okay. There's the use of dapsone that Horowitz has come up with. Burrascano was doing pulsing, a long pulse antibiotic that I described here that I had some success with here too. Okay. And then finally, the new ideas I talk about are the essential oils down here. Okay. All right. Anyhow, take a look at that for some ideas as well too. Okay. All right. So let me go back here. All right, everyone. And thank you for your question. The last part of it is a little bit difficult to answer in terms of the alternatives. There's many. But take a look at the starting point of that one article. Okay? All right. All right. Lori, you have a question about food allergies. The answer is yes. Take a look at my elimination diet and also read the articles on mast cell activation syndrome. Okay. That's my quick answer to you. I don't have time to go show you those articles, but mast cell activation syndrome. And then in my nutrition chapter, look at elimination diet. Read those two articles. Okay. All right. Anyhow, everyone, been great being back here again. As you know, I was off last week, and the week before that I had to cancel at the last minute. So I missed doing these, and so it's good to be here again. So next week we'll be doing this at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, not 5 p.m. I made a mistake in what I sent out earlier today on the 5 p.m. or yesterday, that is. Keep your eyes open for an email tomorrow morning. Off that email, you'll be able to sign up for the next webinar. And also you'll be able to, it'll let you know that the recording is ready to see again too. Good night, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. And good luck getting well.